aware of the fact that they are on their own to a large degree and cannot depend upon a particular company to guarantee their future. Even in nations such as Japan, where lifetime employment has been a way of life, businesses are shifting away from this way of doing things. Both older and younger workers have much to learn from each other. They bring different strengths and weaknesses to the workplace. Acknowledging these differences and helping different generations develop competencies in new areas will improve the productivity of individuals and organizations.
Let's begin with the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call, and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first call is from Cuba. It's from Sit Matel in the city of Havana in Cuba.
Buenos días. More than a question, this is a comment. This is a very interesting subject, and it really has to do with the current growth in companies around the world. So I'd like to comment that there is a lot of interaction, a lot of interest between young and older people that really help this generational dynamics. And I would like to set an example. In our company, we have an average age of 29 and 30 years old. So there is constantly sharing experiences between younger and older people, and we have had a really great experience, and this conference confirms what we have been living and really confirms that we've been implementing the right strategies for our company. And this is really something that also other companies are experiencing. For example, students that are finishing up their degree and that they are now doing their internships in companies, and this really bring new successes to our companies. So thank you very much, and I really congratulate you for this session.
Let me ask, taking that comment, ask a question. As a baby boomer, if I find myself in a work situation with an average age of 29, as we do in Cuba, I'm going to have to deal with Generation Xers. I'm also going to have to deal with people that are older than me. What advice would you give me? What issues do I need to look for?
Well, I think I'm actually very gratified to hear that this company has been successful in managing multi-generational workforce, and I'm glad to see that it has also improved their own success as an organization. And I think that as a boomer manager, this provides an excellent example of how it can work. If they take into account the fact that they straddle, they stand between older and younger workers, they have a unique opportunity to bring them together, to sort of understand both sides and both sides' experiences and strengths, and help them to come together and understand each other. One practical suggestion clearly would simply to be organize a work team around different age groups that would have as its focus improving productivity through intergenerational teamwork and adding to each other's knowledge of the differences that you find within the different generations.
Let's go to Mexico. We've got a call from the Centro de Educación Tecnológica Industrial, número 5, number 5, in Mexico City, Mexico.
Gracias,
On behalf on Engineer Escamilla, of the director of this center, I am asking the following question. What is the attitude of the, in regard to family values, what is their perspective? And number two, how can we improve communication in an education institute that has more people from the baby boom generation? Thank you, and I would like to extend my thanks to everybody that is there in the studio today.
I think that it is in educational institutions do face unique differences because of the fact that they often cater to a younger demographic. But one of the things that people need to remember is that part of the educational process is, in fact, learning from people who have not just academic experience, but life experience. And I think that this gives the boomers sort of a unique opportunity to provide more than just their academic knowledge. One of the things that is important, too, is to understand that learning can always be a two-way experience. And drawing on younger generations to be teachers as well as students is something that can be difficult because you don't normally think in those terms, but they really do have unique skills and knowledge that they can impart to their older managers or their professors even in that kind of environment.
Thank you. We have another question from Mexico, this one from Veracruz. It is from Conalep in the city of Veracruz in the state of Veracruz in Mexico.
Hola Susan, soy Álvaro Capetillo.
Hello, Susan. This is Alvaro Capetillo. What could you comment on regard of the interest and of the different attitudes in different generations on the need to obtain new knowledge on being up to date and also on self-learning? Thank you very much. Good morning.
This is an excellent question. One of the things that is hard sometimes for older managers to remember is that it is vital to keep your own skills up to date. Young people, by definition, are coming into the workplace with current skills and knowledge because that's what they've been doing. They've been learning and educating themselves or being educated in an institution on the current state of technology and work and everything else. As we get older, it is very easy for our skills and our knowledge base to become stale. And what's vital is that older people take it upon themselves. As you noted, self-learning. Don't wait for your organization to approach you or to teach you. Make sure that you yourself go out and seek updated skills, seek new information. Try to keep yourself as current as possible. And this will also help bridge the different generational issues. If you know more about technology, if your base information is better, you will better communicate with young people who are more familiar with it. So self-learning is vital. Organizations need to help people bring their skills up, but we have to be, as individuals, proactive and take it upon ourselves to get out there and learn new things.
Now we have a question from Colombia. It is from the Federación Nacional de Comerciantes, known as FENALCO, in the city of Medellín, in Colombia.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días.
One of the failures in humanity has been really the education system, because it's been focused on having and not doing, and this has been proved in wars and corruption and other aspects that we are witnessing today. How can the business community participate in a globalized environment, having more equal opportunity and more just and humane and community-focused environments? Thank you very much.
Individual businesses can take it upon themselves to take steps to reach out to underserved populations, to people who have not been well served by the educational system. And this is a problem that is not unique to any one country. It's certainly the case often in the United States and every country. Education is not always doing its job. Businesses, though, can only do so much. I think it's incumbent upon businesses to take those steps, to make an effort, because it benefits their productivity in the end to have a well-educated pool of people to draw their workers from. But you also will have to take steps to get governments and communities at large involved to form coalitions to make sure that education is available and is appropriately structured for people, not just young people, but older people, many of whom don't have the same educational level as today's young people. So I think that you need to do outreach. You can offer educational programs within the organization without having to turn to outside sources, but building a coalition is really the long-term solution.
We have another question from Mexico, this one from the Universidad Tecnológica de Tecamachalco. It's in the city of Tecamachalco in the state of Puebla in Mexico.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días. Saludos para todos. Nuestra pregunta más bien es un comentario. Las diferencias culturales.
We have a comment between the different cultures in the world really have to do with the identity in the inner generation. However, a ver, un momentito, señora, and X really has different variations. For example, what would be the generation's X attitude in terms of family, for example? What would be your opinion in this respect?
This is an issue that has a lot of cultural variation, so there are many answers to it. Certainly what I know of most of the cultures in this hemisphere, Generation X is actually quite family-oriented. Right now, they are at the age at which people traditionally start families. And because of this, family is very important to them. They do want to get ahead. They want to be good at their jobs. They have dedication. But they also want a balance between work and family. Certainly in the U.S., we see that strongly among Generation X, that they are not willing to make the level of sacrifice that older generations sometimes made in order to succeed at work. They really feel that family is a priority. They want to spend time with their families. They don't want to just work, work, work. And to the degree that companies can accommodate that, can validate that, it will improve the relationship between those Gen X workers and their managers. And organizations owe it to society and to younger generations to evolve with changing times. And as people want more balance between work and their life outside of work, organizations need to try and find new ways to accommodate that.
Thank you for the excellent questions. Let's now move to the second module of the program.
I began this presentation today speaking of the rapid increase in the pace of change in the world today. Young adults are more connected to those changes. They have much to teach their elders, not only about new technologies, but about cultural and social changes. One of the greatest strengths of young generations is their ability to innovate, to challenge the status quo and make everyone rethink long-held assumptions. Some of the world's most successful companies are those that were started by young people who are not locked into an old way of thinking. Bill Gates created the company now known as Microsoft when he was about 20 years old. The entrepreneurial spirit among younger generations is illustrated by the results of a survey conducted in the U.S. in 1998. People were asked whether they would prefer to work for someone else or to be self-employed. The younger the respondent, the more likely they were to prefer self-employment. Fully 72% of people aged 18 to 24 said they would like to work for themselves, but the share dropped to a low of only 54% among people aged 55 to 64. Not only do younger generations tend to be more innovative, they also have a different degree of tolerance of risk. Risk aversion increases with age, in some measure because as we get older, we have more at stake and more to lose. In the eyes of young people, change creates opportunity. But for older people, change creates risk. The key is to develop an intergenerational dynamic that balances the two approaches. Older workers can be encouraged to be more creative and innovative, learning from their young colleagues how to take a fresh look at the organization. Younger generations can be taught to look at past experiences, to consult with older mentors in order to keep them from making reckless changes. Often, however, established procedures have evolved over many years for good reasons. Companies that attempt to reinvent themselves too often can simply end up being unstable without a clear identity inside or outside the company. Older generations not only have a greater understanding of and investment in a company's organizational structure and mission, they are also the repository of the company's history. With the rapid pace of life today, young generations sometimes find it difficult to understand the value of the history and experience of older people. The multi-generational workforce is going to be the norm from now on. But just as having a variety of workers with different educational backgrounds can benefit an organization, the varying strengths and weaknesses of different generations can be one of the greatest assets a company has. The key is understanding the differences and building on the strengths that each person has to offer. I interviewed members of two very different generations. Here's what they had to say about getting along with members of other generations in the workplace. Robert Gillespie is a senior systems analyst and web architect at Merck Pharmaceuticals. A member of Generation X, Robert is here to give us his point of view about intergenerational issues. His opinions are his own and not those of his employer, Merck. Robert, tell me, what do you think are some of the frustrations that young people have in the workplace today?
I think one of the most interesting things about the way that the business and the workplace and industries are today is that a lot of the young people seem to have a lot of knowledge that older generations don't have. And so there's a disparity. You have these young people coming up and they know that they have the knowledge that the company needs to succeed, and yet they're being managed by people who don't really have that understanding exactly of what they're doing, but they're managing them and controlling the show. And so I think part of the frustration lies in that they don't feel that they're given a fair shot at having a say in things or having a voice in the system.
So they have the technological know-how, and they have it in greater quantity than their managers. They're better at it, and yet they're just told what to do. They feel like they don't have a voice, is what you're saying.
Exactly, yes. And I must admit, I felt like that when I first entered into the high-tech sector. I had studied intensely the most modern and up-to-date technologies and was very knowledgeable about what was going on in the current vanguard. And I was very, I felt a little frustrated when I first entered in the fact that I thought I could help more than they were allowing me to. Mm-hmm. And but I soon came to my senses and realized I was being a little presumptuous about my abilities. However, I noticed that most of my peers and most of my colleagues that are the same generation, same age area, they seem to have that kind of a continuous theme with them.
Okay.
That they feel a little left out in the
Well,
process.
let me ask you, what advice would you give older managers in dealing with this and other problems and frustrations of young workers?
I think probably the most important thing would be that they try to provide a voice to the younger generation. Because these people feel frustrated, because they know that they have knowledge that the older generations don't have, if different systems and ways of working that can allow them to have a voice and allow them to be part of the process would make them feel more fulfilled and more a part of the success of any team or any project.
And you're not talking about just encouraging a sort of suggestion box where people are encouraged to give an idea, but they never feel like necessarily that idea is heard, adopted, taken seriously. You're talking about something more fundamental than that, right?
Correct, yes. I've been involved with many projects in different corporations where there was a small team of people where the leader of the team had to be somebody younger because they needed to be knowledgeable about the technical things that were going on the project. And so the team, though, would be managed by a higher up and would dictate a lot of the timelines and a lot of the ways we went about it, even though they wouldn't be involved in the day-to-day or even know exactly what's going on in the day-to-day. And I think certain teams were frustrated because they didn't feel any kind of autonomy. And
do you think in a situation like that, if the young worker were given more sort of face time, more time to spend discussing these issues with the manager, and sort of direct contact, do you think that would help?
Yes, yes. There's many meetings you have where the higher-ups are meeting and talking about things, and you hear it kind of secondhand, or you hear about it later through another person. And I think if they were involved more, and even if they weren't, if they were given a chance to speak in these meetings or be involved in the meetings in some way or given some kind of role, even if that role didn't greatly affect the process, just the fact that they were there and involved in it and felt a part of it and hearing what was going on, I think it would greatly improve relations. Yeah.
Now, can you also give us a little advice for young workers about how you've noted their approach? They're often very eager and very ready to take on responsibility but don't feel like they're heard. How might they change their approach? How might they do things differently to improve intergenerational relationships?
Well, again, I think it goes back to this technological arrogance, I guess you might call it, and that because they know they have this knowledge, that they need to realize, I think the average person in this generation, in my generation, I think there's a lack of appreciation of this vast experience that older generations have gone through, and how, even though they didn't do the exact same technical things or perform the exact same skills, there's so much to be gained from their experience on the approach to everything and how you go about these projects and how you go about managing things day to day, that I think the younger people need to realize that there's a great reservoir of information and knowledge that's there for them, and they need to appreciate that more and take advantage of that.
And they're sometimes sort of blinded by their own technical knowledge to that other arena and its importance in the workplace.
Exactly, yes. There's such a demand today for these young workers that they dictate a lot of times what company they want to be at, what price they set the price, that type of thing. And so it creates this big head mentality as they enter in these corporations, and they're working with people that have been there 10, 20 years. You know.
Right. Well, now you've been in the workplace for a while now. You're not just starting out. Has your perspective on intergenerational dynamics changed since you started working?
I think so. I think I myself appreciate more the skills or the expertise of some of the older generations on how to approach things, and the reserved approach they will take to certain things. That the young upstarts are much more impetuous and want to accomplish things now and do it now and everything now, which is reflected in the generation in other parts of society rather than just the workplace. And so I think that I have slowed down my expectations, but not in the favor of just to slow it down, but in the favor of so that things are done right and done appropriately and involve everybody and are not just done to get done.
So you've learned from your older mentors, and now you have something to offer younger workers. You're in an ideal situation now.
Yes, so I look forward to working with up-and-comers, new employees, and trying to pass that on to them.
Right.
And they'll take more of they'll take it more from me than older people, because they can, I'm a little closer, so they'll sometimes take me more seriously when I can give them that advice.
Well, thank you very much, Robert.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Stan Schultz is a member of the World War II generation. He's had the opportunity to observe a lot of changes, and he's been through all of the many stages of a career, from being an entry-level employee to owning his own business, Global Safety Products. Stan, you have many years of experience in the workplace. You've seen a lot of successes and failures in terms of intergenerational dynamics. Tell us, from your point of view, what are the positive aspects of a multi-generational workforce?
Well, I think it's a necessity that we have multi-generational workforces. I am a merchant, number one, and I'm not trying to restrict myself to selling just one generation. I think that it's necessary to understand all of the generations to be successful in business, and to have people working with you that do the same. They don't. To me, the key word is understand. Understand the other generation.
That's great, because not everyone finds it very easy to do that. You speak too, I think that was an important point you make, that customers come from many different generations, and if your workforce understands the consumer base, so to speak, then you have a better chance of succeeding. What are some of the specific things that you've seen come of some specific benefits from having multiple generations working together, perhaps on a project or on some sort of product or other service?
Well, I don't believe in the old teaching the young, and the young just sitting there and listening to what the old have to say. Particularly today with all the technology, those of us at my age now have a lot to learn and have to accept the new technologies, which many in my age group do not do. They will not cooperate, let's put it that way. It's absolutely necessary to learn from the young, and I think that the young have a lot to learn from the older people.
Do you think it's hard for older managers to learn to take direction from young workers or young managers?
I think generally it's difficult for many of them to put aside the paternal aspect and to learn from the younger ones. But I'll say this, in this highly competitive world we're in today in business, you better be willing to accept new information from whatever source.
What advice would you give young workers and managers on handling older workers or handling their managers or working in a multi-generational workforce?
Try to understand where they come from, and my successes, and there have been many failures, believe me, I don't say I've just been totally successful all my life, has come from finding commonality with people. of all age groups. And when I say people, I not only mean workers, I mean those people that I am attempting to do business with. So you can find commonalities in many different ways with people that are not in your generation. I happen to be a sports nut, and I find that this is a great bridge between generations. You can talk to a 20-year-old about baseball, basketball, football, and you can talk to a guy my age about it. Humor, I find, is very important in getting along with people. Speaking of getting along, Rodney King said it. Why can't we all get along? I believe in that.
Yes.
I believe we have to get along.
Yes. I think that that's excellent advice for people to find commonalities is really excellent advice for managing difference of any kind in the workplace. Would you have any advice for older managers that